Baltimore and WNST.net. It is still baseball season, despite me rocking the red and getting ready to hopefully kiss the chalice somewhere under a desert sky, like a U2 song. Alan McCallum is our longtime Orioles historian. It's been a couple weeks since Alan and I have gotten together. Lots of change for the fortunes of LeBron James and the Capitals, amongst others, but nothing really has changed for the Orioles, Alan, and I guess that is such the disgusting part of all of this, right? Like, in any normal organization, someone would have been fired, sacrificed to the baseball gods. There would have been some press conference, or at least Andy McPhail would have shown up in a Father's Knows Best a sweater and said something to us, but the deafening silence sort of speaks for itself with all of these dead men walking around the organization right now, from Machado and Adam Jones and Brock and Britton on the field to Buck and Dan in the front office to what is going to become of Chris Davis. I don't know that there's a bowl of popcorn big enough for all of this, but something is going to happen over the next 8 weeks, and I'm not even convinced they're going to deal Machado, man.
You're certainly right that in a normal organization, somebody would have been fired by now. And I have to say that I'm not convinced that they don't believe they don't have a chance to get back into it still. I hope to God that I'm wrong.
You mean the Gerardo Parra deal's around the corner here any moment?
We know the Hanley Ramirez rumors are already happening.
Oh, my God. That's an indictment. As a concept, that's an indictment, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm concerned about
Colby
that.
Rasmus.
Well, just here's an example. Over the weekend, after I guess Joey Rickards been up for 2.5 or 3 weeks or so, Buck finally puts it in the leadoff spot. And my first question is, why in God's green earth is Joey Rickard here if it's not to find out whether or not he can be a leadoff hitter for you or not? Playing Peterson or Trey Mancini, we know Trey Mancini is not going to be a leadoff hitter in the major leagues. And when you're this far into the season, it's clear you're going nowhere in terms of the playoffs. The only reason you make a lineup out is to find out about certain players to be able to field a team to compete with the other clubs.
It is the 2019 preseason. I mean, make no mistake about it, right? I mean, that's what it has to be. But I guess for Buck and Dan, who have their records associated with this, and for all the players who have contracts and feelings and all that, but you're the worst team on earth right now, literally.
And I understand that. I mean, managers are trying to look out for their career records, and general managers are going to try and get another job next year, and players have pride. But for the organization, the only thing that makes sense right now is to play players that you're hoping to trade enough that people see that they have value and will deal for them, Mark Trumbo or Jonathan Scoper, Manny Machado, and to find out about other players. And Joey Rickard, sure, they say we want to play good defense in the outfield, and he can run. He's a good outfielder. He's not a great outfielder. He's a good outfielder, better than Trumbo or some of the other guys they might put out there. But in terms of putting him in the lineup, the only reason for him to be there is to find out whether or not he's an actual leadoff hitter or a fourth outfielder. And for Buck to be batting him 7th or 8th or even maybe 9th, I can understand. It makes no sense to me. I mean, these are the kinds of things. Subsequently, continuing to bat Chris Davis in the middle of the lineup, and I know he's started to move him further back, but for weeks he continued to bat him in the 4th and 5th spots. I mean, this is a player who is batting in the 150s, and it's June.
He's not a Major League Baseball player anymore. I mean, he's not. That's obvious, right?
He's not a Major League Baseball player anymore. Now, that said, he's got a contract that's going to keep him tethered to the Orioles for a long time. I'm not saying bench him. I'm not saying release him. I know those things aren't going to happen, at least not right now. But if you are in this situation and you're trying to evaluate your team and you're trying to produce a situation where you can score runs, the last thing you're going to do is put the easiest person to get out in the lineup in a key spot where he's going to get more at-bats than others and come up in situations where they have to score. And the classic example of that was Adam Jones hitting a double and them trying to score from first with 2 outs with Manny Machado coming up because they're going to walk him because there's absolutely no threat behind him. and they get thrown out at home plate that ends the rally that might have helped them tie the game. And Chris Davis was batting right behind Manny Machado. You could see it playing out while the runners were running around the bases that this was going to happen, and they were going to get thrown out at home. So these are the kind of decisions as a manager. You're if you're actually trying to maintain the integrity of the season, you've got to consider that. Two, if you play Chris Davis in the bottom of the order because they have to play him, to find out if there's any chance of him coming out of this. And that's the only reason you play him. You play him to find out if there's any possibility that he's going to get out of this thing. And if he doesn't come out of it, and he finishes the season with a 150 or 160 average with 300 strikeouts, then you have every justification and responsibility, for that matter, to release him at the end of the year. We played him every day. We played him. He took batting practice. He worked with the instructors. He did everything that we figured. We tried everything we could, and he never came out of it. The law of diminishing returns says we have to let this player go, even though we spent all this money on him, because we're trying to make the team better. That shouldn't happen now. It shouldn't happen in July. It shouldn't even happen September 1st. But at the end of the season, if he's never come out of this, then you know the answer. And if he does come out of it and can find his way back to being somewhat respectable, then great. Then you carry on with it and bring him back.
So you're saying the 300 at-bats with him, you suck up at this point, right? And I don't disagree with you in trying to fix him and putting him on some sort of DL and some sort of get him some, I don't know. I don't know. Rest, give him some time off, think about things. I don't know what their prescription could possibly be or what door they haven't tried to open at this point, right? Like,
they've put Chris Tillman in purgatory right now with the phantom DL or the DL spot, trying to get him fixed. And he's only here by contract for another 3 months. They've got Chris Davis for another 4 years. So all the people that say, "Oh, cut him, get rid of him," I mean, that's just not realistic. But 3 years into a 7-year contract, with his numbers declining every season, and to this point where, as you said, there's no evidence that he's a major league player anymore, I think in a season that's going nowhere, it makes sense to continue to play him, not in the middle of the lineup, but to give him at-bats every day to find out if he can come out of it. But after that, after 3 years of watching this and having it completely bottom out right at this point, if that's the way the season ends, then I think you have no choice. And at that point, you can justify the circumstance where you cut him.
He is Alan McCallum. He's Alan at WNST.net and always our Orioles conscience and historian. Alan, I am writing letters to the Orioles beginning, well, probably a few days after the Caps hoist the Stanley Cup here, hopefully some point over the next week to 10 days. And the All-Star Game is going to be held in Washington next month, and I've held firm on a promise I've kept to my wife back when she was battling her first leukemia battle that she wanted to go to an All-Star Game. I still haven't taken her, so next month I think I'm going to be down in D.C., courtesy of the San Diego Padres, so big thanks to my Padres friends as well. On a frame-by-frame basis, and I'm going to begin doing this, a letter to Peter Angelos and John Angelos and Brady Anderson and Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter. They're drafting baseball players this week. Brady Anderson's not qualified to draft baseball players. Dan Duquette, who probably isn't going to be here in 90 days. The whole notion that Dan Duquette would be involved in drafting players for an organization that he's not going to be a part of, I mean, the whole thing is so ass backwards that even when they're in last place under the worst organization on earth and no one's been fired and they have this Chris Davis problem and this Manny Machado problem and this Adam Jones problem and this management Buck Showalter, Dan Duquette problem, that they don't, and they have this international drafting problem, they have this massive $400 million lawsuit problem, they have a last place problem, they have a DH problem, they have a pitching problem, they have an organizational depth problem. But the hope for any organization to draft the right players, Man, oh man, they're not even doing that right this week. And it's here and now. This is real. It's not playing out the string in the American League East, which they're doing, or these rain-out issues that they're going to have. But the only hope is to pick the right baseball players, and there can be no confidence that they have the right people in that position to do that right now.
Well, first off, they don't have a rain-out issue. Teams that have a chance to go to the playoffs and have to play a lot of games deep in the doubleheaders and late in the season have playoff problems. The Orioles will only have opportunities to see players that they're trying to evaluate at the time that comes up. So that's not a problem they have. They've got plenty of other problems, no doubt. I've said this to you before, and I firmly believe this. I think it is. I don't believe that as an organizational philosophy it makes sense to put all of your eggs in the pitching basket when it comes to drafting players. That might be a radical thought, but certainly for the Orioles, I think that for every 5 pitching prospects you get, you're lucky if you get one quality starter out of them. Maybe if you're lucky, you get a starter and 1 or 2 relievers. But I think a lot of organizations waste a ton of their top draft picks on pitchers. And I am firmly of the belief that if, as an organization, you spend your top picks drafting quality position players so that you have an abundance of them, that you can trade what you need to get the kind of pitching that can help you win. You might have to sign a free agent or 2 along the way as well, and you still have enough position players to field the team consistently. And here's the key point, and then let the players that cost a tremendous amount of money go when they're free agents and replace them with the players that you have growing on the farm. I completely believe that is the best way to get the most out of your farm system. And obviously you have to do some drafting of pitchers. I'm not saying that you don't. But for the Orioles, I mean, it's not like the last 30 years. I mean, we've had Mike Messina, I guess you could argue Ben McDonald. They traded for Chris Tillman. Gausman and Bundy, their final epitaph has yet to have been written. They've created a few good relievers, but there's not a ton after that have had consistent quality careers in the big leagues. So, I mean, out of 30 years, you're talking, let's be generous and say 10 good starters. I mean, how is that a quality percentage? And it's not just the Orioles. I mean, that's the truth for a lot of teams. But somebody has to draft starters. I just think for the Orioles, for an organization trying to get back on their feet, that's probably the best way. And then the reality is, just on the short term, their starting pitching isn't exactly what we would like it to be right now. But it's not as embarrassing as it's been in the last couple of years. It's not Jimenez going out there every time. And it's hard to evaluate what's going on with the starters right now because for all the things that are happening on the field, the most consistent and glaring problem is that this team has no ability to score runs. And you have to put yourself in a pitcher's shoes, so to speak. It's really hard to go out and feel like you have to be perfect every day, pitching at Camden Yards against the American League East, and not struggle. It becomes a mental game. So I think it's hard to look at what's happening with Gausman or Bundy, Cashner. I think we know the story about Cobb and how his the beginning of his season got off to a rough start, but we've seen Gausman and Bundy go through stretches of brilliance during the course of the season already, and have them come up. You know, you think about Gausman in Oakland having one of the best starts of his life and having the Orioles lose the game in the extra innings. Dylan Bundy has had quality starts that he's lost. Same thing for all of them. And eventually, when you start trying to be too fine, then you invariably make mistakes and get yourself into ruts that you can't get out of. So, I mean, they're
hitting 231. Their OBP's under 300 as a team. They've only hit 68 home runs, so this this team that used to just mash the ball and hit home runs and score runs that way.
And Manny's gotten hit 18 of them.
They don't walk. They strike out. I mean, they've had less than 2,000 at bats and almost 550 strikeouts. I mean, they strike out 1 out of every 4 times they come to the plate. It's unthought of, unheard of in the history of baseball. I mean, there's so many horrific parts of this, and I know we went back to the '88 season and all the cutesy part of that back in April. That it's been 30 years and all that. This team was 17-41 at the turn heading into the week, going up to New York, and that team was only 11-41. I mean, it's not that far off that this team by the All-Star break could be every bit as bad as the '88 team. And the thing that I've talked to Luke about at length, Alan, is that once you start to take Machado out of this lineup, right, and once you deal off 1 or 2 of these pitchers, as you probably would hope they would do, you deal off Adam Jones before July 30th, which I hope for his sake they do.
You go to Jonathan Scope, offer him a contract. If he doesn't sign it, you trade him too.
Well, okay, fine, but who's going to be playing on this team the last 60 days of the year, and how bad that might be in the end? This is as good as it gets. I mean, 300 ball is what they've done with they're not waiting for someone to come back from an injury that's going to fix them. They're not waiting for a cavalry pitcher or a young phenom that's going to come up here and, get 300 at bats. They're not waiting on any of that. They're waiting on the only players they have that are any good to be gone. So
see, you say that, but even 2 or 3 players with a better approach at the plate might help this team get better, as opposed to the overloading nature of
you mean
these
Chris
guys
Davis striking out 75 times in less than 200 at bats? Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible.
So, I mean, there are. I don't know. I mean, it all depends on who those players are. I mean, no, I don't think there are any phenoms necessarily, but players that actually have a plan at the plate might make a difference. I don't know, but the point is, at this point, for a team like this, it's actually better to lose as many games, because then you get a better shot at the top.
That way you can screw up the draft next June.
Right. I mean, and clearly they're not tanking. I mean, I think we know Buck in the squad well enough to know that that's not what's going on.
Well, Alan, then tell me about Buck. Tell me where they are, because he's deodorized from this. He's like Teflon to some degree. He'll go out into the marketplace at the end of the year and be the hot manager that managed to win in a place where nobody since 1997 could do it around here. So,
yeah, I don't know that that's true, Nestor. I think before, and I'll be honest. I mean, I downplayed the result of this when it happened, but I think that the bringing Ubaldo in instead of Zach Britton in the playoff game against the Blue Jays 2 years ago took a lot of bloom off Buck's rose. I don't know that Buck is looked at as the genius that he once was looked at before.
Well, he won't be once this team goes 55-108 or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Literally, which is the road they're on. And, the psychological part of him holding young guys together, Dylan Bundy is going to go 8-17 or 8-19. He's going to lose as many games as they let him lose, because they're not going to be able to hit the ball well. He's going to be frustrated and kick in the dirt. And all of a sudden, even the guys like him and Gausman, you F them up the way you did Mattis and the way you did Arrieta. And I know you probably would agree that they F Britton up by putting him in the bullpen to begin with.
It's not a coincidence that there are a number of pitchers that left this organization and immediately, not a year after or 2 years after, but immediately went out and got better. Not all of them at the major league level. I'm not saying that, but
well, the Arrieta thing should be alarming. Same dude, same arm, same body, same head, same moxie, completely stinks here, and goes and becomes the best pitcher in baseball literally within 12 months. Literally within 12 months. It's uncanny. He literally became a different pitcher the day he got there, but by the next spring training, he was ready to go win 20 games. It's insane.
And that's an indictment on the organization, and it's an indictment on Buck. And I will say this. I mean, look, I admire parts of Buck's been a great manager. He was here, and there was no question that he was a huge component.
Dude, this wouldn't have happened with Bobby Valentine or Joe Girardi had they taken over this sewer. 6 years ago.
I don't think it would have happened the way it did with Buck. But there comes a point when your voice it doesn't get heard anymore. And I think that Buck's loyalty to some players is an issue, and I think that it has put the organization in bad shape to have him advocate for some players, and to continue to play players with beyond their validity. Again, in spots in the lineup that didn't make sense. There comes a point when you have to look and say, I need to back off this guy, or I need to do this way. And Buck gets so caught up on, well, this guy's been here for me. I'm gonna ride him until he's gone. That's a problem. And as much as you like players, it's a business, and a team that 6 years out continues to go to the same guys in the bullpen is probably going to be a team that's going to lose. A team that continues to put a guy hitting 150, hoping that his contact to damage ratio is going to make up for all the strikeouts and all the horrible at-bats, in the middle of the lineup, that's a problem. And all of that stink is attached to Buck. It's for all the million things that Buck has done well while he's been here, and I don't have any doubt or problem saying that he was the right guy. I think I believe it's time for him to go. I believe it's time for them to find a new philosophy, and I believe that it's probably time for another voice in that clubhouse with a new crop of players listening to it within the next 60 to 90 days.
Alan McCallum has been one of our voices of reason and an insider on Orioles coverage here since 1995. We will continue to discuss the malaise and demise of the Orioles. Is there anything at all you want to say about them on the field to add to this? Because we go on, and my Dear Orioles series is coming around the corner, and I'm going to go person by person, story by story in the summer where I turned 50 years old, and they haven't won since I was 15 years old. I think it's a very, very hard product to watch right now, and I think from a media standpoint, when I put it on, the fact that Jim Palmer, is not allowed to speak his mind. I even saw Joe Angel sort of urinating on the project.
He didn't even say anything bad about Chris Davis. He just said something that was true, and they shut him up. It's amazing.
Well, it's who they are and who they want to be. It's not going to change the 4 or 5 at-bats that he gets every night, and it's certainly not going to change the philosophy of people like you and I who've seen this. But, this is – everyone's a good winner, right? They were all smelling themselves in Kansas City a couple years ago and, all bragging about how they were all geniuses and they were all going to do this and do that, and they'd resurrected it. It is amazing how quickly the water comes out of the boat. Not just here, but for the Dodgers. I mean, the Cubs have struggled, right? I mean, you see what the Braves have done. The Nationals have scuffled as well. It's not easy winning 90, 95 games, and it was so hard to get there for a year or two that it's also hard to maintain that. And they're not good managers. Peter Angelos is not a good manager or strategist. There's no one strategizing much of anything around there, and I think that's really shown now. And now that they're losing, you're going to see all the cracks in the character and the integrity and the honesty and the running and the accountability. And Luke had the greatest quote of all, and I tweeted this on Sunday. When it's everybody's fault, it's nobody's fault. And I thought that was very poignant because this isn't just Peter's fault or just Dan Duquette's fault or just Buck Showalter or just Brady Anderson or just Chris Day. This is everything. This is the whole dumpster on fire, and Machado's going to make him look bad in the end because he's going to leave, and Adam Jones is going to go get his and whatever. But it's everybody's fault, and you really can't pin it on everybody. And at various points you blame Duquette for off seasons and stuff because that's his title. But, around there it's been very hard for me to blame anybody other than Peter. And now that Peter's no longer with us, I'm not allowed to say anything disparaging about him because all the heinous manure that he's pulled off over 25 years, he's now a sympathetic figure. But he's not going to be to me.
So, Nestor, is it any one person's fault? No. But where they are right now, to me, is a failure of the wishing and hoping. And what do I mean by that? 2014 was certainly the high water mark for this renaissance of Orioles baseball after 14 losing seasons. And virtually every decision since then has been one that was a mistake in one way or another. And we look back on this time last season when they had a good month of April, and then things started to fall apart, and they couldn't see the forest for the trees about what was going on, and they wanted to believe that making a move or two at the deadline would make the difference, when they had been a bad baseball team all season. But they wished and hoped and thought, well, we can do this. We can get into the wild card. And here's the reality. This team, yes, they used to hit home runs, and it put salve or some magical elixir on a lot of faults. But this team has been heading this way for a long time, and they needed to shake up the lineup, shake up the philosophy, get a new approach, get younger again, because they were a young team, and they're not anymore. They're not old, but they're not young either. And all you have to do is look back to the Yankees of 2 years ago that had a ton of grizzled veterans, and they weren't going anywhere. And they bit the bullet and traded away some guys and released some players and cut some salary and made some hard choices to bring young talent into the system. Yes, they have money that can help escape. They can help escape some of their problems. But that's not how they did this. They got back on top by making some hard decisions at the right moment. Now, the Orioles' right moment was last summer in July, and they missed it. And they have an opportunity to recoup some of those mistakes if they go about it right now. But as I said to you when we started, I'm not convinced that they don't believe that there's some way they can get back into this thing right now. As you said, because they still haven't done anything to acknowledge that they are bad, whether that be fire someone or make some statements about how they're going to approach the future, or release somebody as a gesture to say, we're about to shake this thing up. Now they have another 6 weeks or so to really figure that out. But the market's probably going to open sooner for some clubs than others. And so they need to be prepared when that comes. And the first way to do that is to announce who's actually going to run this thing going into the future. If it's Brady Anderson, so be it. Is he the right guy? We've already talked about this. I don't know. But they need to make some decisions. They need to make them out in the open and tell us what the approach is going to be going forward. And they have to acknowledge, and this is important, we didn't talk about this the last time we spoke, that Chris Davis says in the early part of May, maybe we need to have a new approach because just trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark isn't working anymore. Really? Thank you for that enlightening statement. That they embrace a new philosophy, whether it be sabermetrics.
Well, I don't think there's any philosophy you can embrace when all you could do well was hit the home run, right? Like literally,
right.
It was an Essex Beer League softball team. I mean, that's what it was all along. On its best days, it hit a lot of home runs. On its worst days, it struck out and didn't.
Well, and
see the
and
Houston
they used
series
to have
last
guys
year,
like
right?
Markakis and Wieters and a couple other players here and there that helped bridge the gap between those guys, but they don't have any of those players anymore. It's time to admit and acknowledge some things, and with that's going to come some departures. But they need to start making those things aware to the people that are their fan base and the people that pay attention to them. They need to do that now.
Denial is a river in Egypt, right? It's not the Patapsco River Basin. Alan McCallum has been a longtime Orioles historian, blogger, writer, insider, fan, upper deck sitter, and Free the Birder. It's been 12 years since Free the Birds, Alan. So I look up, and the ring finger is still nude at this point. I'll be writing my Dear Orioles series. I'm going to be looking forward to chatting with you about some elements of that as we get forward here in the All-Star game, and the fifth-place Orioles continue their march on the road this week. Mets, Blue Jays back home against the Red Sox next week. At least it's on a weekday, and the Red Sox won't take over the city the way the Red Sox or the way the Yankees did over the weekend. Alan, take care of yourself, man. How's the band doing? We putting the band back together? What's happening there with the MC?
Stay tuned. We're still working on that, but I will say that I have a lot of friends that are rocking red right now and are extremely excited, and all caps to them and everybody else.
CAPS, 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 caps. I hear the horn sounding. Off to Vegas we go, Alan. We'll deal with the Orioles, as they say, in the aftermath, in the residue. Right now, I'm focused on the prize and rocking the red, but I'll be dealing with the Orioles in 10 to 14 days, and you can let them know I'm coming.
Sounds good.
And they'll be in last place when I get there. Alan McCallum is our guest. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Listen live anytime, anywhere. It is the buyatoyota.com audio vault and our listen live function. Morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox digitally via your email each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, and the Lunk Alarm, and they're judgment-free there. I'm not judgment-free on the Orioles, but I am judgment-free at Planet Fitness. And the Laurel entries also in the morning newspaper each and every morning, all for this weekend down at Laurel. And obviously the Belmont and Justify and Bob Baffert making a run for Triple Crown and the history this weekend. We'll be monitoring that as I get back from Vegas on Friday night. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Streaming live right here on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And if you want breaking news, subscribe to our WNST tech service. It is our best service. Even our competitors use that. I found that out at Michael's Cafe last week. You subscribe online and you get it free, and it's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Don't forget, Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday. We'll be rocking the red before Game 5. I'll be checking in from Las Vegas, Nevada. We got Orioles and Ravens stuff with Luke up in the buyatoyota.com audio vault, as well as all week long here as we do tons and tons of hockey as we anticipate and hope for a Stanley Cup visit here in Baltimore. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.